What if I told you there was a certain supplement you may be taking which is directly sabotaging your physique? And I mean, like, this thing sucks. It increases body fat, decreases muscle, impairs cognitive ability, hormonal function, and about 300 other not so great effects on your body. And yet for some reason, 40% of adult Americans continue to do so on a daily basis. And at this point you might be thinking, Igor, what the hell, none of this makes any sense, and you would be right, until you substitute the word supplement with insufficient sleep. Now right off the bat, I know what you guys are thinking, like, Igor, okay, we know all this stuff, like, yeah, sleep is important. What's next? You're gonna tell us that smoking is bad and vegetables are good? Like, we know all this, isn't it common knowledge? No, apparently. And honestly, I don't think I'm even going out on much of a limb when I say that it's probably like the third most important variable when it comes to your physique. Like, it's literally training, nutrition. I remember I was watching a video on this topic by Mike Israetel about a year ago, and at one point in the video he said that getting better sleep, especially for those who are like sleep deprived, it can be as comparable in terms of strength to going on like a legit anabolic steroid cycle. And as crazy as it is, I fully agree with him. Like, not for people who are already getting 7 hours, for them it's not much of a benefit, but if you're getting like 4 or 5 hours and you get even like 1 or especially 2 extra hours of sleep, of good quality sleep, it's literally more powerful than like sticking testosterone in your ass. And as crazy as that is, like, you know what? Don't take my word for it. Let me give you some examples. So what they did is they found 10 people who are somewhat overweight. They had a BMI on average of like around 27, and they put everybody on a diet. Essentially, it was the same diet in terms of the calorie deficit. And then they split them up into 2 different groups. The first group was allowed to sleep up to 8.5 hours per night. However, the second group, they were only allowed to sleep 5.5 hours. And so they ran this experiment for about 2 weeks before analyzing the changes in their physiques, both in terms of body weight, body composition via DEXA scan, and then some other blood hormonal parameters. And the shocking results were that both groups lost actually around the same amount of weight. They all lost around 3 kilograms on average, which comes out to about 6.6 pounds. However, this is actually the wrong number to look at. See, although the overall weight loss was similar in both groups, the type of weight, the kind of weight that they lost, this is where things got very interesting. The group that was allowed to sleep pretty much like as much as possible, pretty much like a sleep buffet, they lost around a 50-50 ratio in terms of body fat, fat mass, and lean body mass, which would be water weight, muscle mass, and essentially anything that didn't register as fat on the DEXA scan. However, in the other group, the one that did have their sleep significantly restricted, their results, they just sucked. Like, it was much worse because in their case, only around 20% of the weight they lost, just over 1 pound, was actual fat loss. Everything else was lean body mass. Like, it's the worst possible situation where you essentially lost 4 times as much in terms of lean body mass as you did actual body fat. So the crazy thing is that in this case, a difference of just 2 hours of sleep per night resulted in just this overall cascade of negative effects, both from a hormonal and overall body composition standpoint. Okay, well, that wasn't that great, but what about some other stuff? What about, everybody's favorite anabolic hormone responsible for biceps, beards, and I don't know, bullets? I'm talking about testosterone. Well, this situation kind of sucks too. There was one study in particular where they took healthy, normal young men, and they restricted their sleep to just 5 hours per night for a period of 8 days. And actually what they saw was a 15% decrease in their serum testosterone blood concentrations. So not a horrendous drop, but still, ask yourself, would you feel okay dropping your testosterone by 15%? Yeah, me neither. Not surprisingly, there's also a decrease in overall athletic ability, especially with regards to endurance. In terms of like raw strength, we're talking like your raw power on like a 1 rep max, for example. That, the jury is still somewhat out about that and the research is kind of mixed. But in terms of your endurance, in terms of how long you can work out for multiple sets, reps, exercises, in that situation, the evidence is a lot more clear and, well, it sucks. The outcome sucks. You're gonna take a hit. And so at this point in the video, you guys might be thinking, all right, Igor, that's enough. You win. You have officially scared the shit out of me. But what can I actually do to improve my situation? Well, luckily there's actually like a bunch of stuff, like actual practical things that you could implement like today to fix your situation. But for those of you out there who maybe need a bit more help, for people out there who might even be potentially dealing with some sleep disorders, you guys might need a little bit more of a professional opinion. And in that case, I recommend you check out the sponsor of today's video, Sleep Doctor. There's this guy. He's been like one of my best friends since high school. His name is Steve. And I remember back when we were in college, when he was like 20, 21, he persistently felt like absolute dog crap. He couldn't focus in class. He always felt fatigued and weak, just in, general day-to-day life, let alone like in the gym. He would always wake up feeling like, honestly, he'd tell me, Igor, I swear to God, I slept like 1 or 2 hours, at least that's the way it feels, but I'm in bed for like 8 hours. He was losing his mind. He's like, am I being abducted by aliens or something, where I've fallen into like a time loop in a black hole? And he eventually did get a sleep study which diagnosed him with sleep apnea, a surprisingly common, but also relatively serious sleep disorder. And the reason that I bring up, my old friend Steve is because I truly think that 10 years ago, had he had something like the sponsor of today's video, Sleep Doctor, him getting the diagnosis that ended up like drastically improving the quality of his life, this could have been done so much faster, cheaper, and overall a lot less stressful. See, Sleep Doctor is an FDA-approved at-home sleep test that accurately measures key sleep metrics to diagnose the root cause of your sleep problems, and all of this is done from the comfort of your own home. The overall testing process is really simple. There's like an app on your phone which literally walks you through what to do. There's like this thing you put on your finger, on your chest. Overall, the process took me like 45 seconds to do. And I was really surprised at like how overall comprehensive the sleep study, the final report, was. I mean, like, my friend Steve had to like wait 6 months to schedule a sleep study in a hospital 10 years ago, and here I am, in modern day doing pretty much the equivalent, except I'm doing it like at home in my bed next to like my girlfriend and my dog. So yeah, if you're someone who's constantly dealing with symptoms like feeling perpetually fatigued, or snoring, waking up with constant dry mouth, or just like finding yourself actually waking up almost like gasping or like choking for air, I recommend you look a little bit more into this, maybe get a professional opinion, and in that case, Sleep Doctor is an excellent way to do so. And right now, my viewers can get 50% off your order at trysleepdoctor.com/Vitruvian. But for the rest of you who may not have like serious diagnosed like medical sleep disorders, but you still kind of want to, overall just improve the quality of your life and fix your sleep hygiene, here are a few things I recommend you start doing pretty much like now. Number 1, try to be more consistent with regards to your overall sleeping and waking schedule. I remember back when I was in university, I did something which, looking back on it, was really a dumb idea. I pretty much based my sleep schedule around my classes. Now, in high school, this wasn't a problem because every day I'm up at pretty much the exact same time. But now in university, when I have like 8 a.m. calculus on like Mondays and Thursdays, and then every other day I'm waking up at like 11 because my first class isn't until 2 p.m., this is a surefire way to really start feeling like crap. And a big reason behind this is because our bodies actually operate on something called a circadian rhythm, which is essentially kind of like an internal biological clock that literally operates on a 24-hour cycle. Now, the interesting thing is that whatever you set your clock to in terms of waking, whether it be like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 9, 12 p.m., who cares? Whatever it is, as long as it's consistent, this will be a much more overall healthy sleep pattern. You going to sleep or waking up at random times dependent on how you feel the day before, this is overall kind of a bad idea because it's going to be much more likely that you mess up your circadian rhythm and therefore get worse sleep, both in terms of quantity and quality. Other things you can do would be to try avoiding screens at least an hour before bed, or if you can't do that, make sure that it's switched to night mode or orange mode or whatever you want to call it, or just get yourself a pair of blue light filtering glasses. You can literally pick these up on Amazon for like $15. Caffeine is an obvious one, but this one is actually, I think, one where a lot of people, they unfortunately kind of underestimate how much of an actual effect caffeine can have. One study in particular recommended a 9-hour buffer between caffeine consumption and sleep when taking a small amount, but this actually increased to as much as 13 hours when we're talking about a larger amount, 200 milligrams plus to be specific. And so I thought this was so ironic because there are so many like young guys out there probably right now who like dry scoop pre-workout at like 6 p.m. and then proceed to like smash chest or legs or something like 5 hours before they should realistically be heading to bed. When in reality, that might be like the worst possible thing you can do, because you're gonna get like a little bit like this much more energy and subsequent like muscle hypertrophy in that workout because of your pre-workout, but then you're like sacrificing this much in terms of hypertrophy because you can't get actual good, high quality, high quantity amounts of sleep, which again is the most important factor when it comes to actually recovering that muscle. And then there are also just some kind of little hacks that you can do to further improve the quality of your sleep. For example, did you know that there actually is an optimal sleeping temperature? And it's actually considerably colder than what many of us walk around in normally during kind of like our day-to-day lives, kind of like regular room temperature. It kind of differs depending on like which organization or which expert you talk to, but the general consensus is somewhere around 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius, which yeah, for some of you might really be surprisingly cold. But if you're someone who like sleeps at like 75 Fahrenheit, pretty much like room temperature and then some, this can actually have a little bit of a negative effect on your sleep, and it might not be the worst idea in the world to crank that down a few degrees and then just grab an extra blanket. And finally, the last thing that I recommend would be to consider supplementing with something called melatonin. You guys have probably heard of this before, but essentially melatonin is the main neurotransmitter in your body that is actually responsible for telling it that like, hey, it's time for bed. They've actually measured this and they have seen that like it goes up in the human body when the sun goes down, when it gets dark outside, and then pretty much the exact opposite, it plummets the second the sun comes up. Now the research seems to indicate that melatonin isn't really that involved in keeping you asleep once you are asleep, so if you have issues with that, melatonin probably won't help you. But if your issue is falling asleep in the first place, that's pretty much exactly what melatonin does. And one of the crazy things about it is that unlike so much other stuff out there, you supplementing with it, it's just like literally just a little pill, like a little capsule, or even like they have like little gummy bears and stuff, it doesn't actually impact your body's own natural production of melatonin. That is fantastic. And specifically in terms of dosage or dosage timing, it seems like the sweet spot is anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, give or take. You don't really want to go more than that. Like if you take melatonin now and you anticipate you're going to go to sleep in like 90 minutes or like 2 hours, that's a little bit too late. Essentially, you took it too early. The effects are going to wear off and you're gonna have to take more later. Now, specifically in regards to dosage, the actual evidence is pretty varied. I mean, I've heard ranges from 1 all the way to 10 milligrams, but it seems like the general sweet spot for the majority of adults is probably somewhere around 3 or 5 milligrams. So overall, melatonin in some ways is kind of awesome because it really seems to be all positive with at least no documented negative side effects. It's kind of like the creatine of the sleep world. All good, no bad. Sleep is something which I think a lot of people out there really do not focus on nearly as much as they should, especially in a world where so many people are spending their time on other random crap. Some weird supplement that some guy on YouTube told you to buy, which has this much scientific research. Or some new special amazing exercise, which realistically, let's be honest, is 3% better than what you used to be doing before. Everyone is so hyper-focused on all this stuff because it's exciting, it's interesting, it's sexy. You know what's not sexy? Telling people to sleep more. So yeah, that's about it. Don't be like me back in college. Don't be like my friend Steve back in college. And if your sleep is broken or suboptimal or just not healthy, then essentially, to put it nicely, fix your shit.